Hi, all, Sereena Al-Noor, your host for hashtag Smartgirlschat. Join now. Looking forward to speaking to you. So hi everyone, this is Sereena Al-Noor and I will be chatting with Sasha Johnson today. We are going to be looking at what it's about being in a low space and being vulnerable, and looking at how we can apply how self-love comes in regards to that. I hope you've all had a lovely week, and I hope that those who missed last week's chat, you guys are able to here's Sasha, you guys were able to catch up. So yeah, here we go. It's adding. Hi, Sash.
Hi.
Hi.
You okay?
Hi, honey. Yes, I can hear you and I can see your beautiful face. How are you, honey?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right, Tar. I'm just
That's
checking my
good.
volume. Am I okay? Yeah, you can hear me
Yeah,
okay.
perfect. Perfect.
Oh, awesome. So, um, welcome to Smart Girls Chat. I'm honored to have you on my little Facebook live show.
Honestly,
Uh,
part of me.
oh, thank you. And last week was really good, and I'm honored to have you here. And talk. We're going to be talking about going from a low space
Mhm.
and vulnerability to where that takes you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I won't. I'm trying not to kind of say anything so that I can let you say it, say what it is or what it's about. So it was awesome watching you and your daughter on the BBC the other day. It was just so cute, like to see her in that space, and it's nice to see the BBC having, women of color talking about their stories, and our experiences. When I've had conversations with journalists and newspaper editors before, and I've explained that, you know, it's not just the Black community are not just about knife and gun crime, and it's not just about our men. We have stories as well that
Yeah.
are just as interesting
Yeah.
as those stories that you keep trying to
Mhm.
harness and pull on that actually downgrade our community and don't make us look good. So it
Yeah.
was nice for me having those conversations with those journalists and things like that over the past 2 years. It was nice for me to see that they had invited you on to talk about such a topic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Um, yeah, it was a nice
people can
experience.
see a woman of color in a good light.
Yeah, for once, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a nice experience. I was glad that I was given that platform. Um, and yeah, like you said, being a black woman, I feel like it was even more, just that little bit more special, um, because people could hear my voice for once instead of just reading what's in the newspaper and, just seeing what's on the internet. They could hear what was
Yeah.
coming out of my mouth. So yeah, it was a good experience.
Okay. So tell us a bit about Sasha and Goddess Lounge, your projects and what you do.
Okay, so the Goddess Lounge was birthed because I was in a low space and needed to kind of find who I was again. And in order to do that, I had to kind of start digging deep and pulling out some
Yeah.
stuff that needed to
Hi,
be
Maxine.
pulling out stuff that I needed to face. And so through that, that was my journey of self-discovery. And so I started to write about it, and writing's one of my passions. So I started to
Yeah.
write about it and pull it in blogs. And then I started to do podcasts and put it out there. And I realized that all of us women, we generally go through the same things. We have the same feelings. It's just that we don't talk with one another. We don't express
Yeah.
this. There's this common misconception that because women are emotional, they talk, it just, this misconception that we actually sit down and are very open and vulnerable with one another, and it's far from the truth. Like, we hide things like men too. And
Yeah.
so I realized that, we all feel the same. And through my writings, I realized that a lot of women resonated with the stuff that I wrote about, the way that I felt, the experiences I went through. And yeah, it's just been a journey ever since then. And it's that now, to be fair. Like, I'm still pulling stuff out. I've still got a long way to go. And for me, it's about empowering women to kind of be honest with themselves, honest
Yeah.
about who they are, rather than the person they want to be or they want the world to see them as. So
So
yeah,
tell us
gotta
about your
say.
writing.
Okay, so my writings, they just varied from topic to topic. Honestly, like, I've pulled
I
out so
love
much.
your writing. I do. I
Thank
love them.
you.
And
Thank
I
you.
really enjoy your podcasts as well.
Thank you. Thank you. I think for me, as we're talking about vulnerability, this is my space to be vulnerable. Um, it's a space for me to be very open, not only with myself, but with other women, so that they can vibe with me, but with themselves as well. Because,
Hmm.
when it comes down to it, we're all one.
Yeah.
We all want, we're all the same. Do you know what I mean? So there's no difference. So for me, my writings, I've tried to be very raw and honest about how I felt or the experience I went through. I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything. I'm not trying to hide behind anything. I'm really just putting it out there and giving it to people, so that it gives them a space to kind of see and think, okay, like, yeah, I felt like that, like, wow, like, how come she can be so honest, like, just out there? Maybe I should try it myself. Um, so that's where my
Yeah.
writing came from.
That's awesome. Um, so it's more about you empowering other people than empowering yourself. How does it empower you to, when you write, how does that make you feel being able to express yourself in that way, you know?
Honestly, it's a release for me. It's a release because my blogs are almost like an online diary as such. So it's like,
Okay.
yeah, online journal. So as much as I'm being honest with myself and opening up, I'm letting the world see that vulnerability. I'm letting the world see how I feel. And so for me, even though I'm empowering other women, I'm still empowering myself, because I'm making those steps, like, to be vulnerable, to be open. So it's like, wow, Sash, you jumped from there to be here. And so for me to watch myself transform through my writing, through me speaking, for me it's
I
amazing.
need that.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing. I couldn't I couldn't see myself doing anything better, to be honest.
Oh, bless you. I mean, we've done stuff together, we've worked
Yeah,
together,
yeah,
and you've done the Four Powers coaching program at one point. So for me, I'm hearing that you are aligning with your authenticity and
yeah,
maintaining your integrity, basically. So you're honoring the words and thoughts that you give to yourself and others, and you're being empowered by that rather than being depressed by that,
yeah,
and
yeah.
also being authentic and encouraging other people to be authentic as well. So really, you're expressing yourself from that space. So that's
Yeah,
awesome,
yeah,
for me to hear
yeah,
personally. Anyway,
definitely. Thank you.
yeah. So let's talk about the topic.
Yeah.
Low and vulnerability. What is that?
Okay, for me, being low and lacking that space of vulnerability is almost like locking yourself. It's like putting yourself in slavery. It's almost putting the chains around your ankles, and putting the chains around your wrists, putting the chains around your neck, and putting a bandage over your mouth. Like, it's you're caging yourself, and that's what it was doing for me. It's suffocating myself. And to feel low for me was to feel lonely, to feel like I was stuck, to feel like I was suppressed, to feel like you know, I was in a space that I couldn't get out. It was almost like being in quicksand where I was just sinking and sinking
Okay.
and I'm fighting myself out. Do you know what I mean? And that lack of vulnerability was the lack of me being honest to myself, the lack of me being open to myself. Because essentially it's about self, you know, forget everybody else around us, it is about yourself. And so for me, that vulnerability was very important. I feel like I've been running away from that from a very young age. I would say from about 11. So if I go back like from 11, that's when I stopped expressing myself. And through my teenage age it just carried on.
So
And
what was it that what was that point where you stopped expressing yourself? What was it that made you stop expressing yourself?
okay, so like growing up in a household where I was very opinionated, I was always told like just kind of like speak when you're spoken to and just kind of shut up and stop saying things that just, you know, was on the forefront of my mind. And so with that, I started to be quieter and quieter. Not only that, I got reached the age where I was starting secondary school as well. There's this whole new world of people out here who can be vile and horrible, and that within itself just shut me up because I thought, wow, I'm not like these people. It's not okay for me to say how I feel. It's not okay to have an opinion. And so as the years gone
Yeah.
on, I just got quiet and quiet and quiet. Um, stopped expressing myself, didn't tell people how I felt. I kind of was like a people pleaser, just agreed with things. But whilst I was doing that, it turned into anger, it turned into
Okay.
bitterness, turned into resentment. And I can only say I was angry with myself, resentful of myself, bitter towards myself. And so I had that lack of vulnerability in my friendships, at home, at work, because I started working as a teenager, and in my relationship as well. There was a big lack of vulnerability. You could almost say that that wasn't Sasha in that relationship.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So you're saying lack of vulnerability. Um,
yeah.
Explain that terminology to us a little bit more, because we don't usually use it in the context that you're using it, like lack of vulnerability. Like how can it be anything opposite, you know?
Because the reason why I say lack of, because I wasn't being vulnerable at all. I wasn't being
Okay.
open like at all. And so there was a lack of it. So it was like to be vulnerable is to be yourself. And so for
Yeah.
me, if there's a lack of it, then I wasn't present really. It was like I'm just
Yeah.
being somebody else. So
Yeah.
that's my analogy of lack of vulnerability. So for
So
me,
there's
it's
a
like,
negative stigma. There's a negative kind of
yeah,
stigma around
yeah,
the word vulnerability, because actually it's a positive thing to be vulnerable, because in actual fact it's not that you're vulnerable, it's that you are being authentic, and being authentic doesn't
yeah,
actually make you available for some sort of
mhm,
disrespect or
yeah.
abuse. Or-
Yeah, it's interesting you said that because it's true. There is a negative stigma against vulnerability because to be vulnerable, there's, you know, this association that you're weak. You know what I mean? Like you're weak. You are not in control of your feelings. You are
yeah.
just, you know, you're too open for people. Um, so with all those stigmas attached to it, there's a fear that comes there because it's like, okay, then I don't want to be weak. I don't want people to see that side of me. I can't let people see me broken. I can't let people see me be open. I can't let people see me be honest because what are they going to be thinking? So there's a lot of fear
Hmm.
that gets attached to that word vulnerability as well. And I think I
Mm.
carried that for many years.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
And when do you think that it changed for you? How did it change for you?
It's crazy because if you remember, I was pregnant
Yeah.
2015. Yeah. And once I gave birth to my child in 2015, I started to feel a change. I started to make a change because ultimately I was just like, I'm sitting here waiting. I'm waiting for a change to happen when I have to actually physically make it for myself.
Step
And
into that,
so
yeah.
um, in that process, that's when I started to write. That's when I started
Okay.
to write, and that's when I started to be honest to myself about how I feel, the thoughts that I was having, my past experience, like just kind of facing them. Um, and so that's when it started to change for me. And so ever since then, I've always been trying to work hard at just being vulnerable till it feels comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you said about, looking at the past circumstances and happenings that have happened in your life that are
Yeah.
basically not allowing you to be in the present, really. That's
Yeah.
interesting because that's a lot of people's issue, especially a lot of people that I coach. A lot of their issue is that their issues are, they pertain to not wanting to look at how past circumstances are now affecting their present, hence why they can't kind of go ahead and step forward, being self-motivated towards
Yeah.
their future. One of the things that we spoke about on the phone was how witnessing domestic abuse
Mm-hmm.
can affect you. um Tell us more about that. I mean, a friend of mine was wanted me actually to feature that in my documentary. um
Okay.
it didn't fit. However, I thought it was a very interesting topic. So when myself and you started speaking about it, I thought, oh, actually, we could touch
Yeah.
on that during the chat, because I myself share a story in regards to that, experiencing that as a child as well.
For me, the domestic violence that I witnessed growing up was very, it's very horrific, I would say. And so
Hmm.
it almost got to a space when I was older, I was having flashbacks and I'm questioning myself whether it actually happened. I know it happened, but then
Okay.
it's like I'm questioning myself, like, did that actually really happen? And then for
Hmm.
me, it's like, I think it's developed a lot of anger in me.
Okay.
So then anger from my mom for accepting it.
Hmm.
Yeah. And but then angry in me because it's like, is that the way you're supposed to behave? Are you supposed to just be angry with people just to get your point across? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, are you supposed to be angry just to show people an emotion? Are you supposed to be
Yeah.
angry just because you had a bad day? And so I've carried that on in my life, and up until now, because I didn't question it, I was kind of an angry person, not
You're the
understanding
angry
why.
black woman.
Yeah, that label that comes up with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and not realizing why, but now realizing that a lot of that, witness of domestic violence had a lot to do with it, because it's like, do I feel like it's acceptable? No, I don't. Would I then
Yeah.
go and put myself in that situation? No, I wouldn't. Do you know what I mean? But the internal effects of it is just like, okay, like the anger just builds up in me, man. Like, I don't know why. It triggers a lot of anger in
And
me.
did you think it's the frustration of not remembering properly as well?
Well, it's funny you say that because, like, I remember quite a lot. I feel like I've just kind of tried to block it out. Honestly, I feel like I
Mm.
remember a lot. I've literally just tried to block it out because it's not something nice to kind of keep repeating in your
Yeah,
head.
resurrecting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I think the frustration is because I was there. The frustration was the fact that it was done in front of me. The
Yeah.
frustration was because it's like, well, then I didn't matter enough to these people for them to display this kind of behavior in front of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think that
So
that's where the
then,
frustration comes from.
so you felt, yeah, because you kind of feel disrespected.
Yeah, yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
When, yeah, I just wanted to talk about when you was just talking about, you know, losing the memory of that time.
Yeah.
And that's to do with the fight, flight. Is it fight, fright, or freeze? So there's three
Okay.
things you do when you're scared. You either fight, run away, or freeze. And a lot of the time, we forget that when people are suffering
Mm-hmm.
any form of, or they're just scared. Yeah. So that can transpire in the sense of domestic abuse, sexual assault,
Mm-hmm.
uh, just scared, a dog, someone just going to attack you, whatever it is. If you're scared, we forget that people freeze. And what happens when you freeze is there's a part of your brain, there's the amygdala and the hippocampus. Now, the amygdala lets off a notification to let your body know that you
Yeah.
are in danger. So the hippocampus is this part of your brain that stores memories. So when the
Mm-hmm.
amygdala activates itself, it shuts down the storage compartment of your brain in order for you to release something called cortisol, so you can go into survival mode. And that's why you find it hard to resurrect the
Mm-hmm.
memory, because maybe as a child you actually would have froze because you didn't fight back and you didn't
Mm-hmm.
run, so you would have just froze. And that's what it does to the brain when you freeze. The amygdala goes off as a notification to let you know that you're in danger. The
Yeah.
hippocampus and everything else shuts down in order for the cortisol to release itself, so that you are now in pure survival mode.
Okay.
If we look at the body in terms of a machine. So that might explain, I hope that gives clarity into why you feel like you can't remember very well, because
Yeah.
that's the process that happens. I've put that in my documentary as well. I've explained it probably better in my documentary. So I hope that brings a bit of clarity there. Even with me, I grew up in a home where my mom, she was suffered domestic violence from one of her partners, and I probably was about 6, and I literally was had this fear of men for years. So, when we look at it from a spiritual perspective, where people are our mirrors kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
or they when we meet people, they can remind us of past situations. And there
Mm-hmm.
was a point where even in my teenage years I was scared of men, like scared. um and it's not until I got older and started to do the healing and things like that, I was able to piece together why I felt like that. I mean, it faded from it wasn't so strong in my early 20s, but I can still see where that actually affected me in a very
Mm-hmm.
negative way. And I share the same sentiment as yourself in regards to feeling like the adults in the situation didn't really consider how that affected me as a child. And then drawing back on the conversation that I was having with my friend the other day, she very much explains that she was traumatized by experiencing or viewing domestic violence within the home setting.
Yeah.
So it's actually very serious. It's something that we all need to think about, because it adds on to our perception of low vulnerability, as
Yeah.
you would call it. This is another factor that brings the feeling of vulnerability into children's lives,
Yeah.
which does affect the adults. So because the adults have gone through it, they think they're the only ones that who are affected by it, whereas actually, in actual fact, everybody's who is involved is affected by it. And like you said, you're an adult now with children yourself, and you can talk about how that affected your perception of self.
Yeah.
It affected your relationship with your mom. I mean, I didn't trust my mom at all. I didn't feel
Mhm.
like she could protect me.
Yeah. You
So
do, yeah.
our relationship was very volatile, for
Mhm.
various reasons. However, that was one of the reasons I just didn't trust her. I didn't think she was there to protect me.
Mm.
I probably was right in some ways, which
Mm.
I'm sure, as you can guess, because I'm quite open with my story. However, it does affect your self-esteem.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I agree on that. I mean, for me as well, also with men, it wasn't to say that I was fearful of them, but I always tried to run away from the image that I had at home. So that guy, that father, if I was to, meet a guy, I would make sure he was the total opposite, but the total
Mm.
opposite of, does he have the same job prospects and every job prospects as my father, and
Yeah.
does he had a history of being violent towards women? No, he doesn't. So then in that aspect I would just still accept anything that was opposite, even if it was still
Other
bad.
than that blueprint. Yeah.
Yeah. so it's like I could still accept rubbish as long as I didn't have that. Do you get me? As long as I don't
Yeah.
didn't have those
Yeah.
attributes and
Yeah, I get you.
yeah, yeah. So for me, that's what it was. And also as well, it had there was a level of fear, I suppose, in terms of what kind of guys. I mean, for me, it was like that typical kind of, I don't know, road man
The
kind of
road
guy.
man. Yeah,
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 like
yeah.
I wouldn't go near that because that was like, oh no, that's what they're about. You know what I mean? And I can so that the fear was there, definitely. I think subconsciously it was there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's that's like me. I would be absolutely, I just thought that all men have the potential to knock me out
yeah.
because what I saw was just like, wow, my mom was just
Hmm.
like totally helpless and I couldn't help her. So to me, it's like I was in, when I was in a relationship with one particular guy, it was like I was continuously looking like, okay, I just conscious, just anxious. Like, is he gonna knock me out? And I can't defend myself and nobody can. So I'd just
Yeah,
be like, bye.
yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
really there was no need to feel like that, but it all stemmed back to my experience with men,
Yeah,
with my mum, with experiencing my mum's partner, sorry.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. That's interesting. That is. It means it does affect us. I think people kind of take it to surface level and don't understand the depth of these situations happening around, like you said, the other people that are present.
Yeah.
Because then within that, there's we will grow up then to have to lack vulnerability, to lack being open, because there is going to be that fear because it's like, well, I've watched you stay in a situation. So then why am I now going to trust you? Do you know what I mean? With anything, why am I now going to be open with you? If you couldn't help yourself, how can you help me? Kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it just filters on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So you talk a lot about self-love as well. So how
yeah.
does that marry? How does that marry?
I think for me, by being vulnerable is me giving myself that love that I need. Because like I said, I'm being honest with myself. And I think to be honest with yourself and raw with yourself is the most important thing. It's probably one of the best types of love that you can give yourself because, a lot of times we sit around waiting for people, to keep it real, as we say, with us. And we can't even keep it real with ourselves. You know what I mean? And so for me, it's like, okay, then that self love starts there. Sash, be honest with who you are. Sash, be honest with how you feel.
Yeah.
You keep it real with you. You know what I mean? Like we all follow these sayings. Practice what you preach in it. And so that self love element links entirely with vulnerability because I've got to give it to me. I have to, and there's a level of freedom
So
in that.
yes, most definitely. So
Yeah.
self-love, if we could like how could you explain it? Could you give me an example, like a scenario of self-love? So we've talked about being vulnerable is loving oneself. What else would you say is loving oneself?
For me, self love is I say this to other women the same way you would invest time, energy, and space in man. Do it for yourself, and it's the best
Mhm.
way for me to say it to women because it's the only way that people are getting it, and it's the only way for me to get it. I tell you why, because for years everyone's like, you know what, it's all about self love, and I'll be like, yeah, jump on this bandwagon, self love yourself first, not realizing I didn't even understand what it meant. Like we go around with these sentences and not understand the depth of what it meant. And it got to a point where it was like, okay, this is more than affirmations. This is a belief system. Like you've got to fill yourself up with all the good things, the stuff that make you light up. So instead of me waiting on some man to tell me that I'm beautiful, instead of me waiting on my friend to tell me, Sasha, you know what, you're smart. Let me tell myself. Why can't I do these things for myself? Why have I got to look externally for all these things and it's all here? Like sometimes I think we forget that we have the power lies within us. I think once we grasp that concept, things will become so much easier because we're less reliant on the outside world. So yeah, like I said, vulnerability is part of self love. Filling yourself up with positive words is an element of self love, and just giving yourself that time, space, and energy that you would invest in somebody else that you love. Because you know what I realized? Everyone's perception of love is different. So you can't be very
Yeah.
generic about it.
Yeah, because it's like
Yeah.
understanding what your personal love language is, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what it is. And then give it to yourself.
And I've got this like this thought process that self-love might even be a bit of a myth, and that it's more about self-respect
Yeah.
and self and affirming self. How can I explain it? So, for example,
Mm.
can I really, is it about the way I treat myself or about the way I respect myself? Because for example, I can't really love myself the way I love you. I can't really love myself the way I love my daughter because I'm not that person.
Mm.
But what I can do is have enough respect for myself to make sure that the way I interact with people or the way I think
Mhm.
or the way I behave, I carry myself with a level of respect,
Yeah.
which then presents itself as self-love on to the onlooker.
Mhm.
Because when you look in the mirror and you think, oh, I look beautiful, that's more of an affirmation more so than loving oneself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Or yeah,
We agree on that because I remember I was at a stage where it was like affirmations were the go-to, and I'll be in the mirror like, Sash, I love you, Sash, you're beautiful. But I didn't believe it. I got to a point where I was like, these affirmations are rubbish. No wonderful. I was like, I'm not even believing this no more. It don't work. Well, yeah, because it's just words, isn't it? And if you don't believe it and you're just saying it and you're not even resonating with that person in the mirror, it doesn't make sense. But like you
yeah,
said, it is about certain actions as well that choices. I always say like the choices and decisions you make show, like you said, self-respect, self-worth, like how much you have that for yourself. And it's like they're all interlinking it, this whole self-love. For me, like self-love is kind of a cliche word because everyone's just
yeah.
throwing it around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking you to say what self-love looks like.
Yeah.
That's why I was saying for me, self-love it doesn't describe what it looks like. It doesn't tell me how to act. It doesn't tell me
Mhm.
how to behave. However, if I have a level of self-respect for myself, someone says, okay, so you have some self-respect, I get it.
Get that.
If someone's saying,
Yeah.
um, affirm yourself, I get it.
Mhm.
And then that through the action, that then presents itself as self-love.
Mhm. Yeah, and you're right. Like, and that's why I said, like, when everyone was on this, you got to love yourself first. I was like, what does that even mean? Like, no one couldn't give me a manual. No one couldn't give me the first step. Google couldn't tell me my step-by-step process. Like, no,
Exactly,
it was just
exactly.
nowhere to be found. And so for me, what I had to then do first was figure out what does love even mean to me first. Once
Speak
I
to
figured
you.
out that, yeah, once I figured out that, I was like, okay, let's move forward with this. I looked at my choices that I was making. I looked at my thought
Hmm.
processes. Do you know what I mean? Like, even how you
Hmm.
do treat other people as well, it kind of just shows sometimes the level of how you feel about yourself. So,
Yeah.
all of those things combined, you know what I mean? Like, they have an so-called self-love or whatever it is. Um, so yeah, like you said, it's like you said, self-respect, people can resonate with that. Affirm yourself, people
Mm.
can resonate with that. But yeah, self-love is kind of just a word that just, I don't know, arrived.
It must sound good, doesn't it?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like it's like procrastination. Procrastination sounds good.
yeah. But you know what's funny is even like when I did that with the BBC, I didn't entitle it self-love because that wasn't my motive.
Ah,
That wasn't where I was coming from. My title was
ah.
about exploring what love meant to me. And so
Exploring what
because
it meant to. Okay.
Yeah, and so because I have that title, people just, they grasp, okay, that's self-love because it's about me. So, I didn't, that wasn't the title that I went with. That wasn't something that I chose it to be. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, because like if you read my blogs, it's one of those things I talk about, like, it's this word that floats about, but no, I just found it hard to grasp. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, for me, that And a lot of my clients do talk a lot, want me to teach them about self-love, and I guess that's how I dissect
Mhm.
it. And also, understanding that when we're interacting with other people, it's like, being okay with allowing them to be vulnerable as well, where they're disrespecting themselves by probably even getting angry at you and reminding
Mhm.
them, have self-respect for yourself, have some respect for yourself by taking the time to control how you're acting right now.
Yeah, right.
To make them feel it's okay to be vulnerable. And I will, within that space, I will also remind you to be respectful of yourself. It's not about necessarily even you trying to have a go at me, or
Hmm.
being projecting your negativity on me. It's more about that doesn't look like self-love to me as an
Yeah,
onlooker.
yeah. Which is important because I think a lot of people put up this wall, and so in turn, that wall creates that, frustration, that anger. So when people want to just, bite at you and stuff like that, that's them trying to fight that wall that's in front of them. It's like they're punching this wall, it's not moving down, and so to us we're just receiving that end of, I'm gonna cuss you, I'm gonna bite at you, I'm gonna say all these horrible words. And it's like you said, have some self-respect for yourself, like check you, sit down with
Yeah,
you for a minute, yeah, work on knocking down that wall first. Do you know what I
yeah.
mean? Because I've had to do that for myself.
Go in that vulnerable space for self.
Yeah, yeah. And I've had to do it with myself. It's a hard space to kind of put yourself in because it's very unfamiliar to most of us.
Yeah, yeah,
And so we have to start being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
yeah,
And do you know what I mean? And it's that whole
yeah,
perception of being uncomfortable, what's comfortable and what's uncomfortable. Do you know what I mean? It's like, okay, this is acceptable, but this is not. And so because we
yeah,
always go with what's deemed as acceptable, the unacceptable always seems scary. It's like a place we don't want to ever go.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
anyone who's watching, can you press the like button, the love button, the laughing button, whatever it is, to bring the algorithms up so that people know that we are here, and it lets them know that to tune in. Me and Sasha Johnson are talking about how self-love a myth, really, aren't we? That's what we're talking about. And
yeah,
also how it relates to being vulnerable and having low vulnerability, and the stigma around being vulnerable as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
I,
So
I
press the
also
likes and stuff so that we can get the
I
algorithms
feel
up.
like for Black women especially, I feel like it seems to be harder for us to be vulnerable. Um,
Hmm.
because we get a lot of stick. I feel like we get a lot of stick about, the stereotypes that are placed on us, that have been attached to us, because those labels that get thrown at us and that are attached to us, we start to act it. So this whole,
Yeah.
yeah, we start to then be that angry Black woman. We start to then be that the Black woman with the attitude. Do you know what I mean? Like we start to act that out. And it's like before we sit down and check if that's really us, we just start to act, we just take on all these labels that get thrown at us. And so for Black women, it's like it seems to be so much harder to be vulnerable because it's like we all walking around with this big ego. We all walk
Yeah.
around with this big ego. We can't smile at each other. We can't pay each other compliments. We can't just say, you know what, today I'm not okay. Or we can't even ask somebody else, are you okay? Instead, we have to judge. We have to make someone feel small. Do you know what I mean? We put up this wall, this ego, and that makes somebody else feel less than. We've got these bad habits that we need to cut them dead. It's not
One
helping
of
us
the
at
things
all.
that I've learned over the past year or two is to actually cry. Choose to
I
cry.
love that.
Yeah. So that's one of my things, advice for especially women of color,
It's
um,
okay.
is choosing to cry in a situation rather than, even if you miss your partner, for example. A lot of my friends, I noticed at some one point, they'll miss their partner and they'll start cussing and accusing him of cheating and all kinds of stuff, and shouting that you can't disrespect me and I worth
Yeah.
more than this. because you don't come and see me, or you haven't phoned me, or you haven't texted me, or whatever. When why wouldn't you
Mm.
just cry?
Yeah, you say,
Because then that's more, he'll be like, oh, she's crying because she misses me. Oh my God.
because,
Do you know what's again? I've
because
even tried it on my boyfriend.
yeah.
And it actually worked.
Do you
It
know
actually
why?
worked.
Like you said, men they expect us as women to be that, to
Yeah.
be vulnerable and open. And I think this whole stigma with a strong black woman, like, you know what I mean, we're living up to it in the wrong ways. Like, there's many ways to
It's
be
making
strong.
us look really masculine. That's
Yeah.
what's happening.
And to the point that we're
Whereas,
struggling to find our femininity. We can't reach it back.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's because we've affirmed the commands that have been put on us, and we
Yeah.
are actually acting according to those commands. You don't cry, you're strong, nothing bothers you.
Yeah.
You can do this. It was the other day I went for a walk with one of my friends and we was talking about some stuff that's going on in our lives at the moment. And we were just having a little sharing session, walking down the road, went for a walk. And then just as she left the house, she was like, oh, don't worry, Serena. We could do this. We are strong black women. And I was like, listen, that's not my affirmation no more, Rude girl. That is not
And
my
no, we
affirmation.
can't say it.
Yeah.
We
I'm
can't
strong,
that
but yes,
word.
I'm
Yeah.
okay with being weak at the same time. I'm
Yeah,
so
and
okay with being weak at the same time.
that's it. There's this whole fear of us being weak or seen to be weak, that, we just start to be masculine, like too masculine though. Like, I am guilty 20 times over. I can put my hands up, the judge can sentence me. Like, I have been that woman. Being like, I can keep it real. Like, it's what it is as well, because when you grow up and you see that from a woman, you feel and learn that you're supposed to be that way anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you see that growing up from all the other black women that you're around, you're like, okay, that's the norm, innit? Like, that's how we're supposed to act, that's how we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when people tell us to be vulnerable, we're like, vulnerable? Like, what does that even mean? Like, are you mad? Like, I can't do that. It's scary, very scary.
And it's interesting, taking it to the children, for example. Even today,
Mm.
my daughter was getting ready to go to bed and she starts crying. She doesn't want to go to bed and whatever. Then she comes and she says, Mommy, I apologize for being so emotional, blah, 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 blah. I said,
Mhm.
you know what? You're a girl. It's okay for you to be emotional. However, it's not okay for you to project it as anger onto me. And she's like,
And that's
oh,
important. Those are the
that's
things
what
that
I'm
we should
saying.
be telling. Yeah, those are the things we need to be telling, our young girls and stuff like that. Is that it's okay, instead of, no, shut up, you shouldn't be crying, what you crying for? All these stuff that just cut it dead, that put that block there. We've got to start
Yeah,
nurturing it and accepting it, and
yeah.
accept
And allow
ourselves
it.
for doing it as well.
You know what's interesting as well? I mean, I'm just looking at it from an angle of how we can support each other to be vulnerable and that it's okay. So, for example, I guess me saying to my daughter, it's okay for you to cry, it's okay for you
Mhm.
to be emotional. However, what's not okay is for you to project it onto me, and I
Mhm.
feel like that's something, a way to, for something for us to keep in mind as humans, to
Mhm.
be more supportive when people are
Yes.
upset, you know, um, rather than judging people for being upset. I remember when I went to Bali, and I stayed with my guru. Uh, what I found most intriguing about being in that environment was there would be times where I would be chatting a load of rubbish, like proper,
Mhm.
like emotional,
Mhm.
irrational, just feeling like people are attacking me, or in some way, shape, or form. I've just gone into victim mode. And what I found intriguing was the fact that it was like we all knew that, allow that, don't feed into that person. So, for example, if I went over to someone and was like, oh, this happened to me, blah 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 blah, that person would
Mhm.
literally just stand and listen to me and just not feed into it, nothing. just literally stand. And I'd be going, well, what do you think? And blah, blah, blah. And they'd be just like, it's okay. I
Mm.
don't think anything. I think you're expressing yourself. And then I literally would feel myself just calm down because the person's not feeding into what I'm saying, not feeding into me continuing to believe that. So I'm calming, the ego's dropping kind of thing. And the point that I'm making is that if we could bring that into our realities and into our spaces, that whole idea of supporting someone who is being vulnerable, it's all about it's okay us recognizing when we're vulnerable, but when you recognize someone is vulnerable, how do you act? Do you get what I
Yeah,
mean?
thinking about that.
How do you, and that's not from a coaching perspective, that's not from a professional perspective, that's from a
Mhm.
just being human perspective. How do you support? Just be mindful of how we're supporting people who are vulnerable, whether it's our children, our partners, our work colleagues, our managers, whoever it is. You know, that was a really, really, really big tool for me uh, whilst being out there that I brought back with me. And
Yeah.
it would be nice to see more people able to be objective when people are in that space of vulnerability, so they don't feel like they're judging themselves. They don't feel like, oh, I can't do this because now that person's going to say, why are you acting like that for? I thought you were stronger than
Mhm.
that. Oh, you should
Yeah.
know better. Oh, I thought you was this. Oh, your life's all right. Blah blah blah. But whatever the comments are that people make, sometimes we just need to shut up, be objective, or and not feed into what that person's saying.
Yeah, learn to be a bit more compassionate and understanding. Allow people that safe space to just be. I think that's the key thing. Just allow people to have that space to just be, because in effect, like for me, being vulnerable, it's like you gotta trust. You gotta trust the space you're in it. People don't trust the
Mm,
space they're in. They don't feel safe, and so for them, it's like, okay, I can't do this. Something in their brain says, I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel safe at the minute. I don't feel protected. I can't release it. I can't let go. I
mm,
have to protect myself by not opening up. Do you know what I mean? And you're right. We have to start creating these spaces where people do feel comfortable, where we can give people the compassion, the understanding. And I don't think people understand the moment you start judging someone else, you're judging yourself. It just shows, how you actually feel about yourself. And so as much as you may make somebody else feel less than who they are, it shows that that's what you think about yourself, and that's how it is. I
yeah.
would hope more women come together. It's the reason why I created my blog, so that women can, have that space to be vulnerable and, not feel alone.
Yeah.
We've got to kind of unite, and this is not no feminism, girl power kind
Nah.
of. It's not that road, you know what I mean? It's just being honest. Like, let's support each other more. Like, we need it.
Yeah, and just be
We
more
need it.
feminine. Yeah,
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 and you know what it is? I believe, Serena, we need to be a lot of us need to be taught how to be that though.
well, I'm
And
doing
I
a
think,
program at the moment about how to be feminine.
really,
You'll see that. Yeah, you'll see that flying around soon.
okay, that's
Um,
cool.
yeah. So it's interesting, because I'll be doing a lot of sharing my story. I've done a few
Yeah.
YouTube vlogs on me being very matriarchal
Hmm.
in relationships and in my friendships, and how my friends will put that on me as well, that matriarch kind of attitude where
Yeah.
it's all I'm a mom and her matriarch and acting like I'm a part of her tribe and I've broken the loyalty rules and all this stuff, and breaking that down and getting it back down to us just being nice and warm and kind in the right
Yeah.
spaces. I mean, there's a time to harness that warrior energy, and I wouldn't
Yeah.
say that we should take it away, but there's different archetypes to the feminine
Definitely
characteristics that we need to
explore.
to explore, yeah.
Yeah,
Not
definitely.
be that fire-ridden social norms, like we've
Yeah.
talked about.
Yeah, definitely. I can't wait for this course that you're putting out. Then that'll be very
Yeah.
interesting.
It's
Very
basically how to rid
interesting.
yourself of social norms, um, to embrace your femininity. Yeah, it's
Okay.
about harnessing feminine power in your
Yeah.
relationships and then apply that in any
Absolutely.
other aspect of your life and looking at masculine and feminine counterparts as well. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that I think that's needed.
yeah. So it's been awesome chatting with you. I
You
would
too.
like you to so always as well. I feel like I need to give
I
you a
know.
hug. Oh, bless you. So hugs down the phone, hugs through the
I
Facebook
know, I
Live.
know. Energy.
I know. Um, yeah. So let us know where we can find you, your website, your Twitter, all of that, all of
Okay,
that, all of
so guys, you can find me at my blog stage, which is www.thegoddesslounge.com. You can find me on Instagram, The Goddess Lounge. You can find me on Facebook via The Goddess Lounge. And you can also find me on Twitter, which is lounge_goddess. So you can reach me there. You can look at my blogs. You can listen to my podcast. They're also on Spotify. They're on iTunes, they're on Google Podcasts. My podcast are actually called Raw and Real. And so if you type that in, you'll find me on all the podcast platforms. And so yeah, catch me in all those spaces.
Oh, awesome. So yeah, people throw up some likes for Sasha. She's my beautiful, beautiful sister friend. And
Mhm.
kiss the children for me. And
I
I hope to see
will.
you soon, Sash.
Very
Really hope to
soon.
see you soon.
Soon.
Yes.
Very soon.
Thank you for
Thank you
joining
for
us
having me
today.
on.
Sorry?
Thank you for having me on.
Oh, yes, thank you. And oh yeah, and we'll chat soon.
See you
So
later.
see you later, honey.
Bye.
Bye. So, oh, that was so cute. I love my sash, I do. Thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen, if there's any gentlemen watching. And Mohammed. Um, and Aisha has done a podcast recently on I think it's the R. Kelly topic and black women and this whole how we come across aggressive, etc. She's articulated it very well on the podcast. So I'm looking forward to speaking with her next week. So yeah, thank you all for watching. And if you have any questions or you need any advice or this has brought up anything for you, we are actually a project that supports people who are sufferers or victims of or survivors of any traumas. So, in regards to domestic abuse, sexual assault, etc., etc. And if you need any more support or help, then feel free to get in touch. And if we can't help you, then I'm sure I know somebody who we can put you in the right direction. So yeah, have a lovely rest of the evening and thank you for watching. Nichanandam.